I found it by accident the first time, the way you find most things worth finding. I'd been driving home late from a long stretch of highway through the kind of Midwest dark that has no gradations in it, just black fields on both sides and the white line in your headlights. And I needed coffee with the specific urgency of someone who has been driving for 4 hours and has 2 more to go and whose grip on wakefulness is becoming negotiable. I took an exit I hadn't planned to take, followed what looked like a commercial strip for a quarter mile, and there it was. The sign said "Open" in red neon. The parking lot had maybe 6 cars in it. The building was the classic diner form, long and low, a little chrome, the kind of building that looks like it was designed in an era when diners were considered modern and has been exactly itself ever since. It was, according to my dashboard clock, 2:17 in the morning. I went in. The interior was what diner interiors are: counter with stools, booths along the windows, a pass-through to the kitchen, coffee smell, and the distant hiss of a griddle. Warm light, the slightly yellow-orange of old fluorescents that have been burning for decades and have mellowed into something almost amber. A woman behind the counter who looked up when the bell over the door rang and said, "Sit anywhere, hon?" I sat at the counter. She brought coffee without me asking, which is the move of someone who knows what people who come through her door at 2 in the morning need. And she was right. The coffee was excellent. Not diner coffee in the sense that phrase usually means, not adequate and hot and reliably caffeine-bearing, but nothing more. Actually excellent, with a quality that I noticed even in my depleted state, smooth and deep in a way that made me slow down a little and pay attention to it. I ordered eggs. They came quickly and were also excellent. I ate and drank coffee and felt the particular gratitude of someone whose body has been given what it needed, and I looked around at the other people in the diner. There were about 8 of them besides me, scattered across the booths and the remaining counter stools, alone or in pairs, the quiet gathering of people who are in a diner at 2 in the morning for whatever their reasons. I want to tell you about the quality I noticed in them because it's the part of the story that stayed with me after the practical strangeness of everything else. They were, how to put this accurately, they were at rest, not just sitting quietly, not just the stillness of tired people, at rest in a deeper sense, with a quality of settledness that I found striking even before I'd consciously identified it, as though each of them had set down something heavy and was sitting without it for the first time in a while. A man in his 60s in the corner booth reading a paperback with the concentration of someone who is entirely absorbed, not performing absorption. 2 women at a middle booth talking quietly and laughing occasionally. Not the laughter of people trying to be cheerful, but the easy laughter of people who are genuinely easy with each other. An older man at the far end of the counter staring into his coffee cup with the expression of someone who is thinking about something good. Not grief, not worry, something good. The look in their eyes when I caught any of them was, I kept reaching for the right word on the drive home and on all the drives home after subsequent visits. Resolved. That's the closest I've gotten. Not happy exactly, not peaceful exactly, though both of those were present. Resolved. Like people who have arrived at something. I paid and left and drove the remaining 2 hours home and thought about the diner and the coffee and the people with their resolved eyes, and I filed it away as a good accidental find and didn't think too much more about it. I found it again 3 weeks later. Same exit, same quarter mile, same red neon open sign in the 2-something a.m. dark. I went in, sat at the counter, got excellent coffee without asking. The woman behind the counter, same woman I was fairly sure, though I'd only seen her once and briefly, sat back again in a way that wasn't a question. I said I'd been passing through. She said most of her regulars said that. I asked with the curiosity of someone who has spent 3 weeks wondering about something, "What time do you open?" She said 2. I said, "And what time do you close?" She said 4. 2 to 4. 2 hours a night. I sat with that for a moment and I said, "That's a narrow window for a business." She smiled. She said it was the right window for her customers. I asked what she meant by that. She thought about how to answer, and then she said, "Some people need a place to be during those specific hours. 2 to 4 is its own kind of time." She said, "You know how some hours are different from other hours?" 2 in the morning isn't like 10 at night or 5 in the morning. It's its own thing. She said her diner was for people who needed somewhere during those hours. And they found it, she said. The ones who needed it. They always found it. I came back 4 more times over the following year, always on long drives, always needing the exit at 2 something, and always finding the red neon on. Each time the coffee was excellent, and the food was excellent, and the people in the booths and at the counter had that quality I'd noticed the first time, that resolved look, the settledness of someone sitting without a heavy thing they'd been carrying. I started paying closer attention to them. Not in a way that was intrusive, just the ordinary social attention of someone in a shared space, noticing the people around them. I noticed that the regulars, the ones the woman behind the counter clearly knew and who clearly knew her, had in common not a demographic or a circumstance, but that quality, resolved. And I noticed something else that I want to tell you about because I think it's the key to what the place was. They were alone or in pairs, but they were not lonely. That's a distinction that matters. Being alone at 2 in the morning in a diner is often a lonely thing, and the loneliness is visible in the body, in the way a person holds themselves when they are keeping their own company against their wishes. These people were not keeping their own company against their wishes. They were where they wanted to be, doing what they wanted to do, with exactly who they wanted to have with them. The ones who were alone wanted to be alone and were well in their aloneness. The ones in pairs were genuinely glad of each other in a way that didn't perform gladness. I said to the woman behind the counter on my 4th or 5th visit, "Who are these people?" She looked at me steadily. She said, "They're people who needed a 2 to 4 place." I said, "What does that mean, a 2 to 4 place?" She refilled my coffee and she said, carefully, "Some people carry things that are hard to put down. Grief, mostly, or the long kind of worry, or the kind of loneliness that doesn't fix with company, the loneliness that comes from feeling not quite right in the regular world." She said that 2 to 4 was a window when those things were slightly lighter. She didn't know why. She said she'd run the diner for a long time, and she'd noticed that people who came through her door between 2 and 4 were almost always carrying something, and they were almost always, by the time they left, carrying it a little more easily. She said she thought the hours helped. She thought the coffee helped. She thought maybe the company of other people who were also carrying things helped, the solidarity of it. I said, "Are you one of them? Are you carrying something?" She looked at me for a moment and then she smiled, and the smile had that resolved quality, that settledness, the same as the regulars. She said, "I've been carrying the same thing for 30 years, and this is where I put it down every night between 2 and 4. I didn't ask what the thing was. It wasn't my question to ask. On my 6th visit, which was in November, late, a cold night, I was the only customer for the first 40 minutes. Just me and the woman behind the counter and the amber light and the excellent coffee. We talked more than we usually did. She told me about the diner. She'd taken it over from the previous owner, who had run it the same way, 2 to 4, had been running it that way for years before she came. She didn't know how it had started or why the hours were what they were, or who had decided that 2 to 4 was the window. She said she'd accepted it as the condition of the thing, the way you accept the conditions of things you've committed to. She said the previous owner had told her, "The diner finds who it needs and who needs it. Don't advertise, don't explain, just keep the coffee good and the light warm and the door open between 2 and 4, and the right people will come." Just after 3, a man came in who I'd seen on a previous visit, one of the regulars. He sat a few stools down from me and got his coffee without asking, and sat with it in that particular way, the way all the regulars sat, unhurried and settled. After a while, he looked over at me and nodded in the way of people who have shared a space before, and I nodded back. He said, "Rough week?" I said, "Yeah, a little." He said, "They all get better from here, you know." He said it matter-of-factly, not consolingly, the way you tell someone a fact about the road ahead. He said 2 to 4 is the bottom of the night. The only direction from here is up. He went back to his coffee. I went back to mine. We sat in the amber light with a few other people who were also finding their way through the bottom of the night, and the coffee was excellent, And outside the windows, the November dark was doing what it does, and at 3:50 the woman behind the counter started quietly indicating to the remaining customers that she'd be closing soon, and we all finished our coffees and paid and went back out into the dark. I've been back maybe a dozen times over the years. The coffee is always excellent. The light is always that particular amber. The people always have that look. The last time I was there, leaving at 5 to 4, I said to the woman, "Do you ever not open?" She said, "I don't think I could not open, even if I wanted to." She said, "People need the 2 to 4 place. It needs to be there." I think about that sometimes when I'm awake at 2 in the morning and can't sleep, when the regular hours are doing that thing they do in the middle of the night, and everything feels heavier than it does in daylight. I think about the amber light and the excellent coffee and the people sitting in their resolved ease. And I think about what she said. 2 to 4 is its own kind of time, and some people need a place for it. I think about the man on the stool who told me it only goes up from here, stated plain, like a fact about the road. And I think, yeah, from 2 in the morning, the only direction is toward morning. That's always been true. Sleep well tonight. If you're awake in the 2 to 4 hours and everything feels heavy, it's just the bottom of the night. The only direction from here is up toward morning. The diner's open if you need it. Good night.